Hello and welcome to the Free Cheese episode 364. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Sellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Matt, we got a big show. Microsoft Flight Simulator launched. Battletoads launched. Got our first look at a PlayStation 5 commercial. And of course, we had all of the fun at DC Fandome. But first, Matt, I want to tell you about some fun that I had this morning, or specifically, Oswald had this morning.
Oh boy.
As you know, I don't sleep at night because every 30 minutes to an hour, something wakes me. And at 5 something, Oswald wakes me to let him outside. I'm exhausted because just an hour before, Earl woke me to let him outside. Come back in, I finally get back to bed, glasses on the nightstand, and Oswald's plopped himself up on the pillow above my head, just chomping away at something. Normally he'll lick his paws or something, so whatever, but he's like really going at it. And I kind of turn, one eye open, exhausted, and he just has the wings of a cicada. Don't know where the rest of the cicada is. I'm sure if I check my bed, it'll maybe be there. But just brought a good early morning's wings to the bed.
Wow.
How'd your morning go?
Well, so by definition of morning, from 12 midnight to 4 a.m., I was in Warzone.
Oh, wow.
And then I woke up at 10.
Man.
To a cat meowing at me.
Because he wanted to play Warzone or because he had found a cicada?
Probably Warzone.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, how was Batman Forever? You're going down that journey?
Yeah, so I was just briefly telling you, I was mistaken. I thought this was more of a reboot than a continuation of the Burton films. I just remember as a kid, I probably haven't seen this whole movie front to back since I was a kid. So I just remember a lot of neon, and when we watched Batman and Batman Returns, there's not that much neon, so I just assumed soft reboot because Val Kilmer's now Batman, Tommy Lee Jones is now Harvey Dent, Jim Carrey is a out there Riddler, but I don't think that's his fault. I think that's just Jim Carrey in every 90s movie.
Yeah, he couldn't not be Ace Ventura.
Yeah, so, and no, it actually is, it's fine. It's not the worst. It's not as bad as I think people deem it to be. Now, I can't wait for Batman and Robin, though. Because even the trailer, when you rewatch the trailer, it just looks terrible.
I'm I'm an apologist for a lot of that stuff just because I try and find the good, but I went back to Batman and Robin not too long ago, and it was when they started doing Bane that I was like, oh man, this is rough. This is really rough.
Yeah. So
I still want to see it all the way through, but yeah, it's a tough.
Well, I think we've committed to doing the Batman run, so we're gonna soft reboot it after that to the Dark Knight trilogy. And I don't think she's ever seen BVS, which is a small issue because they only have the director's cut, the Ultimate Edition.
Oh, that's fine. That's the good one.
Okay, is it better?
There's a couple of like contextual scenes that I think stitch that movie. A lot of people's complaints, and I'm not going to say, a lot of people's complaints with that movie were that the story felt like it jumped around. I always appreciated that, again, apologist, because it felt to me like reading comic books. Like, at one point you were reading a Wonder Woman comic that's part of this bigger story, and then another part you're reading the Batman issue. Like, coming from the comics background, I was used to that kind of disjointed storytelling in a big event like that. But I think that the Ultimate Edition, it adds like just a couple extra scenes and things that kind of stitch ideas together. Like some of the weird stuff where like, I can't remember specifics now, but like Lex going into the thing to make Doomsday or whatever, like they show that whole setup instead of just being kind of out of nowhere. I think that works.
All right. Yeah, I don't think I've ever sat down and watched it all the way through. I started watching it, but it had been so long since I seen it in theaters, I didn't realize what was added or whatever. So, yeah, and then I guess we'll end on Justice League. So I'll get that fresh rewatch of Justice League that I don't want, but I think I need.
I don't know. I want to watch it maybe, but after seeing that Snyder Cut trailer, and I think the Snyder Cut is an interesting thing to. I largely think that the internet and the community within the internet is mostly toxic and hostile, and I think that. I mean, like, we're going to talk about Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights, and I avoid most of this stuff, but even when I was grabbing the trailer for Gotham Knights to send to either you guys, I don't remember, some posted for us to talk about on the show, and like you just catch the first comment, and it's just like someone being stupid and like upset and whatever. Like, so the idea that the Snyder Cut of the Justice League happened because a bunch of people kept tweeting a hashtag, I think it sets a dangerous precedent because it shows the ones who will be toxic that, hey, if we just complain enough and whatever enough, something will happen. Look at the Snyder Cut. So that part I don't love about it. I do love that, like, it seems like, I mean, we know some of what happened behind the scenes on that movie, but we don't know everything. There's a lot of stuff now. There's Warner Brothers is, like,
more
investigating claims
and investigations now going on. So
like, even outside of what we know, there's stuff that's weird about that movie, but just the stuff alone, like, I think it's cool that movie gets to be made and realized for the vision that he originally had. The stuff they showed in that trailer was like,
I didn't watch it.
Pretty. Oh, dude. I mean, I think most footage was brand new footage, but
really, okay.
You're looking at it and you're like, oh, they didn't reshoot that. Like, it's not like, it seems like all stuff that got cut, like, because it looks, you can tell just by looking at the actors that, like, this is shot back then, and it's like, there's a ton. And the cool thing about that, like, the first thing they do as soon as, like, it fades up from black, it's Darkseid right on the screen. So you're like, oh, okay, they're just doing it. So whatever this movie is, it's you know, it's cool. But yeah, I think, I don't know, you could probably skip going back to it originally.
Nah, I think we got completed because I do like Batfleck.
Yeah, I know, but just wait.
That's all right.
You could get a better version of it.
Well, Joe, I will say that we did, I think, get the Snyder Cut last night with the Matt Reeves panel for the Batman. How they had to cut around his long.
I loved that. I loved it. Because here's the thing. I don't know
answers.
A ton about that dude. Like, I know he's made those Planet of the Apes movies and some other stuff, but I am not super familiar with his work. So when they announced, like, that he was making the Batman movie, I was like, all right, whatever. It's the same thing when they announced Chris Nolan way back when, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Whatever. I don't, the guy made that movie with
Memento.
Whatever. Yeah. So same thing here. I was like, all right, whatever. But then hearing him talk about it and, like, he knows his stuff, man. And I think that trailer looks
that trailer looked great.
And you could see that, like, someone with care and attention to that world is crafting what that story is going to become. So I'm super excited. Did not realize that was Colin Farrell. Like, they show him in prosthetic. Go back and watch it. That's my son's namesake on the screen there. That is Oswald Cobblepot. You see him twice. I forget the exact things, but there's one where I think he's driving, and he says something like, this guy's nuts, or something like that about Batman. It's like, oh, that's, you can see it in his eyes. It's Colin Farrell.
Yeah, I want to rewatch that in a little bit higher res because I feel like that it looked grainy. It could have been just the way because it's all raw footage and they haven't really done too much to it, but it looked kind of grainy on my screen when I was watching it. So I'll look at it again.
He posted
it
a
looks
4K
really good,
version to Vimeo. I'll send you that.
Yeah,
but yeah. I mean, all in all, we'll jump into the other stuff here, but I think, speaking of fandom, I thought it was a really well done event. I think that it wasn't without some cheesy stuff, just because that's what's going to happen. But they talked a lot about the future of DC, and it seems like they're setting the slate for DC Comics. A lot of this event, because they split the event into two parts. So I think the second part in September is going to be more comic book focused and animated movie focused, where this one was more talking about the live action stuff, both TV, film, and then also video games. But you can tell there's been, I mean, obviously that massive layoffs that happened a few weeks ago, there's been a shift, but you can tell even separate from that, there's been a shift from the top down. They talked a lot about TV and film working more closely together and not having these hard lines of like, you can't use that character, you can use that character, that kind of stuff. So it seems like there's less reluctance to just kind of say yes to whatever an idea is, as long as the idea makes sense to do. So as someone who's followed that stuff for a long time, I think it's exciting. Whatever they're up to. And if it means we get Michael Keaton back in the bat suit, I mean, it's kind of a dream come true. Well, Matt, folks listening to the podcast here, big video game fans, as I understand, and probably want to hear about the video games announced at DC Fandome. Why don't we start with... Well, what do you want to start with? You want to start with Justice League or Suicide Squad or Gotham Knights?
Start with Suicide Squad.
All right, Matt. Suicide Squad is a brand new video game from Rocksteady. It takes place in Metropolis this time, so we're out of Gotham. The story follows Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, and King Shark, who are tasked with killing the Justice League. We see in the trailer that Superman is their target after Superman murders some dude. There's clearly something going on with Superman. You can tell that he's been... the beginning of the trailer shows a Brainiac ship crashed on Earth, so I think there's something to do with Brainiac there. And yeah, so it's up to 4-player co-op. You can, if you're playing by yourself, you can switch between characters on the fly. You can jump between any of the 4 of them. They each have their own different abilities. They also describe that each player or each character their mobility is different. So like Deadshot has a jetpack, for example, and they talk about how that flows into combat where he can exhaust his jetpack as part of a maneuver or whatever. King Shark has 2 meat cleavers that he uses. So there's differences between each of them. And it's out 2022 for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. Did I hit everything?
Yeah, just about everything you could hit with what they showed.
How do you feel about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League?
I was low on it yesterday, and I'm glad I got the night to sleep on it. I think the thing was, like, where has Rocksteady been for so long? And you just assume that when they finally revealed it, they revealed it with a bang, with all this stuff and a release date so close because they have been gone for so long. But then you see that the date is 2022, and all we have is really just a CGI trailer that shows what they're aiming for mechanically, but you're not actually seeing it in action, which kind of always bums me out. But I understand why they do that. But I think it'll be fine. I still trust Rocksteady. Did I want a Suicide Squad game of all the different things they can do? No. Would I have liked your Green Lantern Corps game a little bit better? Yes, maybe. But I still have high hopes for this. I'm excited as new characters. There's so many people evidently in the Suicide Squad that before Harley Quinn even joined it that I didn't even I don't know, and I know who Deadshot is, but Boomerang and King Shark are newer people, so it's gonna be fun to fall into that lore, and because I know Rocksteady has that attention to detail, and when you think about it, at least a lot of my understanding of Batman comes from the Arkham series, so it'll be fun to dive down that route, and I hope and then this even goes for the next thing we're going to talk about here. I just hope that that hour and a half of the Avengers I play where everyone kind of played the same, but it was I guess a little bit different. I do hope these are 4 distinct playable characters with very different abilities, and that's why they have you switch in real time all around for different strategies. And I'm actually okay with it just being 4 playable characters as long as they are all distinct and creative, and not so much of the same.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think everything you said, I'm lining up with you. Like, I did not want a Suicide Squad game, but when it was confirmed that's what it was like, okay, what am I going to do? You know, I can't will this out of existence. As much as I want a Green Lantern game, but no, and yeah, there's not a ton to go. I thought that what they did show, and you can tell the sense of humor they're going for. You can see everything's a really sharp contrast to what they did with the Arkham stuff, because it's, I mean, daytime is a big difference. It's funny because if you remember, like, there were all those things about them potentially working on a Superman game. And I wonder how much of that, because we had heard they had done that, and then I wonder how far they got into that before switching to Suicide Squad. Like, had they built Metropolis up to the point that they did before having to pivot? I think ultimately, I think this could be cool. And I was thinking about it this morning, and part of me was like, I don't know, like, how do you make a game with these characters? Like, I don't know, like, I feel like put your best foot forward, right? And then it's like, yeah, but, and I'm like yelling at myself in my own head. I am the comments section to myself. And like, these characters don't get better or don't get more exposure unless they get more exposure. So I'm as reluctant as I am to be like, yeah, Suicide Squad. I'm like, yeah, let's see what they can do. You know what I mean? I think that we could get to a point where these are all household names the same way some others are. You're not going to top Batman or Superman, I don't think.
No,
just because of the lasting power, and there's something so iconic about them that's just not here with any of these. But I'm intrigued by it for sure.
It's just one of those
years to get used to it.
It's just one of those things. Like, Suicide Squad got that bad first impression because their first on-screen debut was a bad movie, right? So, I mean, think about it. Like, if you went back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if like the Guardians of the Galaxy had a bad first movie, we would not be clamoring for them to have a second and a third movie either, right? So I think it's just one of those things where our first exposure was a bad first impression, but now just gotta have to find a way to get them more exposure to fix it.
I rewatched Suicide Squad also, and I didn't think it was bad. I thought I think the final build-up was boring, but I feel like that one also just was, I feel like something happened there, like studio, like, direction that screwed up the flow of that movie or something. But I thought the characters were all well done, well portrayed. The story was loosely coherent. Like, it was good. It wasn't what I would want it to be, but I thought it was good. It was better than I remember it being. But even to that, like, I've just never been into the idea of the Suicide Squad. Like, back in like the late 2000s, there was a push in comics to do more Suicide Squad, and Gail Simone was writing a book called Secret Six, which was similar in idea to the Suicide Squad. Not entirely, but just, like a ragtag group of weirdos that, they're not the Justice League. And there's something about the Justice League that just works that doesn't work in the Suicide Squad. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they're I can't quite quantify it. Maybe it's the anti-hero thing. Maybe it's whatever. Either way, I think so. So looking at this though, visually, I think the game looked, what they showed, I mean, it's all, like you said, pre-rendered stuff, but I think it looked cool. I think the character designs work well. There's a definite like sense of cohesion across what they're trying to do in the films and the comics and the animated stuff. Like, everything seems to be flowing in a way. Like, as soon as they started popping up on the screen, like, they're recognizable characters to what they're doing on film, because just a couple hours before showing off the game, they showed off the new James Gunn movie, The Suicide Squad, and you see so much of that stuff like reflected in both. Ultimately, I think they got 2 years to show us more, so I'm
I think that's what you just have to tell yourself. I was expecting a reveal of maybe at launch or launch window 2021 or even 2020, and I got what is like the proper way to show a game. That's 2 years away, and I think just expectations play with me there a little bit.
I thought it would be next year, honestly. I thought that Gotham Knights was this year and Suicide Squad was next.
I was fully prepared for one of these games, and we're going to get into Arkham Knights, be in 2020 because of with the COVID delay, they probably wanted to unveil it at June, and the whole build to November, December, whatever that was. I fully expected there to be a 2 months away game. I mean, think about it. We don't have a fucking price for the consoles yet, so what's to say we can't launch a game next to the consoles yet?
Yeah. I really did think, and maybe that was the original plan, and then just with, the final bits of development being work from home, maybe disrupted that.
Yeah.
So Gotham Knights, this started off the day yesterday, basically. If you haven't seen the trailer, you should watch the trailer. But the idea is that Batman is dead. A new criminal underworld has taken over Gotham City. So Bruce leaves a message to Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, and Robin to protect Gotham. Kind of work with the cops, or course correct the police, and really just take over where Batman left off. They tease the Court of Owls, so that is, that was long rumored and confirmed here. And through some of the developer commentary, through the press release, you can kind of piece together that there's a larger mystery kind of underlying here with the Court of Owls and even maybe past the Court of Owls. The game itself, open world action RPG. It's set in Gotham, and you can play 1 or 2 player co-op. There's 5 distinct boroughs. And it seems like there's criminal activity wherever. So there's just random little things happening all over the city. This is out PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, 2021. Matt, where are you at?
I'm digging it. The stuff on the outside with the UI, because we saw both a reveal trailer and then they actually had that gameplay segment. In the gameplay segment, you could see the pieces of what is a looting system and leveling and all this stuff there. I mean, you saw clearly the 10 above the enemy head, and then you saw the numbers that you've never seen in the an Arkham game before when you were punching someone. And then there's even that one little spot where I think Batgirl gets the little green little block on the side there to say she got a new piece of gear, and of course it's color coded. So all that is there, but it's to seem like a game as a service, which is nice. It just seems like it's all, it's all within the same thing, and you can kind of drop in and drop out. This was the one I wish was 4-player because there are 4 characters, but that kind of sucks. But that's fine. 2 players will work too. I think what's important to remember, this is the studio that tried to do the multiplayer in Arkham, and I think they have some experience with maybe doing some of that co-op stuff, so I'm curious to see. I never played that multiplayer, so I don't know how it necessarily played. I just know they did it.
It was cool in concept, but I could never really connect. There weren't a ton of people trying it, so it was hard to actually get into a game and give it a shot, but...
Yeah, I got that game much later than when it came out, so I figured the servers were dead by the time I got it. I think this has potential. This is exciting because you got a taste of the Robins and some of that lore in Arkham Knight. Once again, all my Batman knowledge, or a lot of it, coming from these games. So I'm very excited to see even more of it, knowing where a Nightwing and actual Robin and Red Hood come from, and then Batgirl. And I didn't play that DLC, but she was part of the Arkham Knight DLC package as well, correct?
Yeah, and WB Montreal were the ones who made that entire DLC pack. So one thing that was brought up after the fact, I don't know if it was Q&A or Twitter or something, but the Suicide Squad game follows the events of Arkham Knight. It is in that same lineage. Gotham Knights is a brand new timeline for them. It's not following anything from the Arkham games.
Really? Huh.
Yes. So that's strange because I don't know, but they did the thing in Gotham Knights that pops up at the beginning. Bruce obviously sends his video message that he's dead, but he also says the cops haven't trusted the Bat family since Commissioner Gordon died. And I don't remember Gordon dying in Arkham Knight.
Yeah,
I can recall.
Yeah, okay.
So I also don't think anybody's dead. I think that's going to be the thing they unveil as you explore the city and stuff. But so I went back. It's after last night. I went back and played Arkham City and was playing Arkham City just generally, and then I bounced out to the main menu and did some of the combat challenges as Nightwing just to kind of get that feel again. And it's fun. Like even back then, and this is not an Avengers dig, but you can take it as one if you want to. But even back then, Arkham City, so 2011, playing as Nightwing feels distinctly different than Batman. You still have the same rhythmic combat system, and you're still doing the same button inputs to do basically the same thing. But Nightwing feels lighter. He feels faster. His eskrima sticks, being able to kind of like add a quick shock to somebody to slow them down or give them pause, like all those little things like that do make Nightwing feel different. And I think what we saw in the gameplay stuff for Gotham Knights, they've taken all of that and just done so much more in every direction with each character. Like they each look like they play completely uniquely. And they look like a lot of fun, of fun. I don't really like Red Hood as a character just because I never really liked Jason Todd, but I know a lot of people do like Red Hood. And he seems to be some sort of importance here. Like on the Gotham Knights website, Red Hood's the first one that they show, like in the order of like announcing characters. Red Hood's the first one. He was the first one we saw in the trailer receiving the message from Bruce. So I don't know. Like the gameplay, like a lot of the emphasis we saw was Batgirl, but I feel like they're putting Red Hood up front for some reason too. Which initially I thought it was because he was Arkham Knight and they were going to do something with that, but if that's not part of the same story, then I don't really know.
Yeah, it was really weird because that trailer also started with there's an explosion in Gotham, and you just assume Mansion, Bruce dead, kind of go from there, right? But weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh well, I mean, I'm fine for it.
Yeah, and it's nice seeing Tim Drake in the Robin suit. I know this. Just a side
Tim Drake. That's the other Robin that I could not name last night when I was telling Victoria about the Robins. Yeah, so in the comics for a while now, Tim has just had a rough, ever since Damian came along, and I think Damian was an important addition to the Bat family, but ever since he came along and took the mantle of Robin, Tim has just been stuck. Like he was Red Robin for a while, and then I don't know. He's just in a weird spot. And it's nice to see him as Robin again. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dick Grayson is Nightwing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dick's Nightwing, and then Jason is Red Hood. No trace of Damian in this game, which I'm okay with because we have Tim in filling that mantle. I could see them doing some weird stuff, maybe post-launch or something, where Tim graduates and becomes Batman, and then Damian fills in as Robin, but then Damian fights totally differently, so that'd be a weird thing. It's a whole other can of worms they're opening with that. But yeah, I like the core cast they have here. I like that both of these games, Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights, don't need to rely on Batman. I know Gotham Knights is obviously set with the backdrop of Batman, and his presence is going to be there, but they don't need to put Batman behind the controller to sell the game, which is exciting to me, because as much as I love Batman, the DC universe has this huge, wide variety of characters and villains. And
I mean, not even just DC. I mean, just within Gotham alone, you're seeing it
sure,
now.
Yeah.
Like, right, yeah.
I mean, you could even expand past these four, and like you start adding in stuff like Huntress and Black Canaries tangentially, right? But like, there's a lot of characters you could do that would be intriguing. So that's our big superhero stuff for the week. Where do we go from here? What's next? Like I know for me, I'm going back through Arkham City. I bought Injustice
in that regard.
on Xbox.
With us watching the Batman movies, I will say I got the itch for a Batman game. I just don't know where to go. I've replayed Asylum a couple times. I don't know. I don't want to start there because I know I'll burn out. I've replayed City twice. So I don't know if I can find Origin somewhere. If not, I think I was going to hop into Night, because I think I only played it at Night through one time.
So Night is on Game Pass. Origins is
Night I just own on
compatible.
PS4. I can.
Oh yeah, then you're good. Origins is backwards compatible, so if you don't have a copy of it, you can buy it on Xbox, or you grab it on Steam. I think it's on Steam. It's somewhere PC related, and probably runs and plays super well there.
No, that's Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight was the problem child, right?
Yeah, but that's fixed at this point.
Okay.
Speaking of problem childs, Matt, Microsoft Flight Simulator came out this week. I have uninstalled it at this point. Where are you at with Microsoft Flight Simulator?
I played 3, maybe 4 tutorial levels, realized exactly what this was, and I have not deleted it, but it's when I needed the space, it's probably going to be a quick delete.
So I was really excited for this, and I still potentially am really excited for this. The thing I think, like you, that I realized is like this is a simulator. Like starting it up, like this is not just a flight game. Like you are actively pulling levers, adjusting yaw, doing things to actually fly a plane, and it can be used as a tool to learn the basics of actual flying a plane. I think they do a lot of stuff really well. So this is Asobo Studios, who did A Plague Tale: Innocence that we just talked about a few weeks back. They're behind this, working in tandem with Microsoft. And I think that the narration, I think the guidance you have, like with the instructor, I did the tutorials as well. I think all of that is like really well done, really well paced. I think that the tutorials are maybe this was getting into some of the problems I had with actually running the game. But I think some of the tutorials felt like they were half helpful. Like what happened on my end, at least, my experience with it, I would be in the thing, be in the plane. The instructor would say, you need to use the thruster to initiate takeoff. I'm like, okay. How? Like some of it, as you're going, it's like, press 4 or 6 to lean left or right. And it would tell you on screen, press 4 or 6. Then it would be like, press 8 or 2 to move the nose down or up. Okay, got it. Then it was like, use the thruster to take off. And there's no keyboard. There's no like indicator of where the thruster is or what. You have to like, I don't remember if that was the one I texted you about or not.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, like it's like, you got to look for it and know what you're doing. So some of it works. And I didn't know if that was on my end where like the tutorials were just like lagging out and not prompting the way that I expected them to. But that was strange. And I think part of it works well for that sense of discovery and like forcing you to familiarize yourself with the instrument panel in front of you. But also the way the controls are set up for mouse and keyboard was not ideal. Like you're mostly using the number pad, except sometimes you need to use left control. You can't use right control. It's always left control. But you also need the mouse to move your cone of vision and to manipulate things like the thruster or adjusting the trim, those types of things. So that didn't feel great. And then what I found is so I did the first few tutorials with like flying to certain points, turning the plane, landing the plane, take off the plane. There's another tutorial you do, I don't know if you got to this one, where you have to take off, fly into the traffic loop, make one successful loop, and then land again. And I did that. No big. All good. The problem I ran into is after that, the next tutorial, they want you to do the exact same thing without visual markers in the sky and without the instructor telling you when and where to turn. It's fine. It's fine. I can take off. On the right-hand side, there's little check boxes that say reach 5,400 feet or whatever it was. Reach 65 RPMs or whatever it was. And as I'm doing those things, it's checking those off. So I feel like, okay, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I'm doing the things it's asking me to do. I've done this plenty of times. I got this. Well, I'd get to the point in the sky where I'd feel like that's where I was in the part where, you know, they had the visible markers and the thing's not checking off. So clearly I'm not hitting what they want me to hear. And I felt like the requirements for what they want is so specific and so rigid. And I was getting no like real good feedback about it. And once this is where I think some of the performance issues on my end happened. I would get to a point where I would try to correct or whatever, and the plane would just lose control. Like, I'm barely hitting some of these keys to turn, and the plane's just really overreacting.
Oh, yeah, I had that issue.
Yeah, and it was like, that was extra particular. So, to back up, like, I launched this game. I finally get it installed, that whole mess of a thing. I launched the game. The first thing I do, I find Baltimore Washington International Airport is my depart. My arrival at Narita International in Tokyo. Let's do this. I'm just going, right? Like, let's fly to Japan. And I was fully prepared Tuesday night when it launched to just sit down after work and do that. Just fly from Baltimore to Tokyo. Didn't care how long it took. Dinner was already, like, I accounted for everything, man. I was ready to go. And it's like, hey, take off. I'm like, okay. So I get the plane moving. Okay, cool. Check. Sounds good. Then I take off. The plane just kind of naturally lifts. And it pops up on the screen. Press G to retract your wheels. I'm like, okay, I'm pressing G. Wheels are up. And then it says, like, press 8 to point the nose down to balance out. I'm like, okay. So I hit 8 a little bit. Like, I just kind of tap it. Nosedive. Complete nosedive. I'm like, okay. And at that point, it hadn't said anything about, like, press 2 to pull up. So I'm just slamming things on the keyboard. The plane's out of control. I'm like, maybe I should do some tutorials. And this is well after a really long amount of load time. So I was waiting on this game to load for, I mean, over 10 minutes. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. Like, I'm pretty sure it was about 10 minutes to select BWI to Tokyo and hit run. And before I could boot up to this, like, watching the blue bar at the bottom, it took at least 8 minutes, if not. I think the one time I texted you, I said I was at 8 minutes for loads. But then by the time I actually got in, was able to hit play and then get in control of the plane, it was 10 minutes or so. And so then I did the tutorials. And after doing the tutorials, I was like, all right, I'm not going to fly to Japan. Let me just fly to JFK. BWI to JFK. Let's do that. Just go from Baltimore to New York, see what happens. And I launch it, and it is incredibly stuttered. Like, the tutorial stuff where you're in the little biplane, and it seems like the area you're in is smaller. I think that loads a lot better than when you have the big plane and you've, like, I don't know if there's something about what they're loading in asset-wise that's different in that big plane scenario versus just the small tutorials, but something was going on that was making it just chug and stutter. And taking off, I couldn't even take off. Like, I took off, and it was the same deal of just, like, way over course correcting and crashing again. And so I lowered settings. I was like, let me see what happens if I lower this down a little bit. And it still was the same. So I was like, all right, I'm done for the night. I walked away, did something else. And I came back to it a few nights later, booted it up. I set everything to the lowest possible settings you could set it to. And when it actually launched, it looked like I was playing something from like 96. Like, it was really bad. But I was like, all right, as bad as this is, does this work? That didn't work. And I was feeling like it was my computer, but I've heard a couple of people on different podcasts. I've heard from other people I know with decent setups that they're running into, maybe not as bad as I am, but bad enough that I'm like, okay, this is just not. I'll wait for it to hit Xbox if I'm really itching for some flight sim. Which is a shame, because I was really excited about this game, and just like, there's something about that idea of just flying somewhere for a long time, like, that just felt like it would be cathartic or something, like being able to look out and see all that data being piped in from hot Bing maps, you know, like I was looking forward to it. But
yeah, it was just one of those things where I got into the cockpit for the first time, started messing around with the controls. One, like, I did a couple different things with the controls to see if I could get a scheme that I liked and made sense to me. And yeah, I think the issue is, like, you completely have to remap everything to the left side of the keyboard if you want to have your hand on the mouse, which I don't think you can because there's so many freaking keys because it's a sim. So like you run into that little double whammy there, and I didn't feel like putting in all this effort for one flight from BWI to McCarran, which is the Vegas, and I was like, as cool as this might seem to be, I can't get myself into it. I'm not gonna try to force it.
It's more trouble than it's worth, I think.
Yeah, so I never launched into a flight, so I don't know what what that will look like on my machine. I just did the tutorial stuff, and all that seemed to work just fine. I just think that the keyboard stuff's touchy on you nosediving, because I had very similar wing rotations when I was like leaning left or right into turns, into banks.
Yeah.
And I would just like tap it. I was like, oh, whoop. I was like, oh shit, things are happening here. So
yeah, it's really weird.
So yeah, it still seems cool. It seems like one hell of a game I use loosely. One hell of an experience. But I couldn't get into it. I was all excited to play it, and I did 3 tutorials. I was like, I'm not in the mood.
I'd be curious before you do uninstall it. What happens if you try to chart a course and just?
I will do that. I will attempt because I can take off. Can't land, but can take off. I know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got stuff about the new Xbox experience, PS5 adaptive triggers, and a little bit of Battletoads, since that also launched this week. Is it better than Microsoft Flight Simulator? Stay tuned and find out. Be right back. Matt, sometimes dead is better.
Ooh.
As it turns out, I think in the case of Battletoads, I don't really like that game.
All right.
Which is a shame. That game, when it was announced, I was like, oh, cool, they're doing that. That's interesting. And then when we first saw it, I was pretty unimpressed. But then that last trailer with the launch date announcement, I was kind of coming around on. I was like, okay, they have a sense of humor about it. It seems like they've put some time and effort into making this work in a new way for a new audience. And I think it still will. I think it still can. But I think it's pretty, from what I played, pretty shallow in terms of gameplay. So the game starts out where you are playing as, you pick your toad, and you work your way through side-scrolling beat-em-up in the first stage. You fight a boss. Halfway through the boss fight, the boss says bye, literally, and then leaves. You go a little bit further, you fight a little bit, and then you fight the boss again, and then he says see ya, and then you fight some more things. You make your way to the end, you fight the boss, and then you realize that it was all a dream. The toads have been living in some like bunker in a dump, and I guess they insinuate they've just been breathing in the wrong chemicals or something and hallucinating that they were these world-renowned heroes who, whatever. Reality's kind of shattered for them, and they realize, okay, now we have to get jobs. So the second chapter opens up with you having to like hit the bumpers to pretend type on a keyboard. There's little things like that, little inputs that you're doing as they do their respective jobs. One of them is a masseuse, that kind of thing. And it's all cute and funny and whatever. And then you get into the actual game, and there's the infamous speeder bikes thing from the old games that was incredibly challenging. They have one of those here that's not as challenging, but definitely does provide a little bit of it. But generally, I felt that it just... shallow is kind of the only way I can describe that gameplay. You're just like punch. There is some variety you have to do. There are elements of the gameplay. Like you have a punch, you have kicks, you have kind of like a charge up move you do with B. And then you have these abilities to like use the tongue to either like pull a character forward or backward. You can regauge your health by eating flies that are found in the world. And the first bit, that opening stage, as you're working your way through, there's a lot of like injection of humor and stuff that like interrupts you fighting. And part of it's tutorial, part of it's just kind of setting the world up or whatever. But it really just did not feel good to get through that first level. It felt like a really super slog. But then when they do the cutscene after they've got their jobs and whatever, I thought that stuff did actually work. And the way they animated it, everything felt like I was watching a Battletoads cartoon and not watching a Battletoads game cutscene, which I think is what that game needs to be, is a cartoon first and then gameplay interstitched. There were things where like I opened here by saying sometimes dead is better. As I started that game, I was playing it and in my brain working out the future scenario where I find that GIF from Pet Sematary and send it to Mark. And before I could, there's a character at one of the Toad's jobs who says, like, basically exactly that. It just kind of like poking fun at themselves and whatever. So it's a little self-aware and whatever, but I also feel like sometimes that works against it. I did talk to Mark about it, and he finished it and said that he wished he had stopped after the second act. He said it did get better than where I had left off, but it kind of falls off at the end. But they set it up for a sequel, so he said he's also excited to see what ideas they explore in a sequel, potentially. I think it's another one, like Streets of Rage 4, where if I had played this with somebody, I would have been a little bit more open to it. The problem is there's no online co-op with Battletoads. It's couch co-op, which is a bummer.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's on Game Pass if you want to spend some time with it. I would not recommend it. I think if you're looking for a side-scrolling beat 'em up, I would spend time with Streets of Rage 4 instead, probably. I think that's a better way to go. But yeah. Long live Battletoads, I guess. We did play some co-op this week, though, Matt, with Halo 5 as we continue through our journey. And actually, as we near the end of our journey with Halo 5, we've only got a few missions left.
Yeah, we're in the last third. I think actually a little bit into that last third as well.
Yeah. So you said we were playing... we played a big chunk the last time we sat down to play. And you said that despite difficulty and having to kind of reset these checkpoints every couple minutes... Halo 5 has been one of your favorite campaigns in the Halo series. What about it has elevated it compared to the other ones for you?
I think, one, just the gameplay. It feels a little refreshing for Halo. It got it into kind of like the new era of shooters with speed and things like that. I mean, keep in mind when it came out, you had things like Black Ops, I think 3 and Infinite Warfare and the space shooter kind of genre started taking off with jetpacks and wall running. So they kind of did their own little
at that point.
Yeah, they kind of did their own thing to get into the 21st century, or not 21st, but like the new era of shooters, which I can get. I still have a soft spot in my heart for the classic Halos, but also I do like the evolution in gameplay, and I think it works really well once you kind of wrap your head around the controls and kind of the mechanics of the game with your like little thruster pack and how that works. But I think that just in general, like just the general gameplay is a big part of it. But two, I like when Halo campaigns have that kind of sense of urgency to them. Like in 2, like it feels like when you're switching between Chief and Arbiter, like you are racing for something, and there's always just that level of pace of like, I got to beat Chief to the thing, or then Chief saying I got to beat the Covenant to the thing, and he thinks the Arbiter is on the wrong side, and the Arbiter hates Chief as well because of the mission he sent out on. Until, of course, the events that later on in that game. But like they're just from the start, when you find out you're the Arbiter and what you're sent out to do, there's such a good pace to 2, and I think 5 kind of has a similar pace where you have the two heroes, Locke and Chief, and their teams around. And Chief is obviously after Cortana for obvious reasons. Locke is after Chief for not following orders. So you have these differentiating ideologies, and all around it there's this mystery of Forerunners and Prometheans and these Guardians and what the hell Cortana is doing and where it all lies. And I think it's been paced beautifully. I even called that one mission, I'm like, I really hope we don't get the reveal on Cortana, because this is kind of like making me want to play and see what happens, and then it kind of cuts right where you think you're going to get some answers, and it goes back to Locke. So like, I'm just really enjoying where all that goes, and it's still working despite me not really knowing much about the Forerunners and the Prometheans because of 4's problems, where a lot of 4's lore came from that one cutscene towards the end. And I hate when games just kind of throw like a lore dump at you at a pivotal moment at the climax of a game, because I can never retain it all. It's just too much at one time. But yeah, no, I'm having a lot of fun with this campaign, even through these fucking difficult areas on Legendary with the way they do the I guess the pickup system in this game, as opposed to traditional Halos where you just respawn.
So do you miss playing as Master Chief? I mean, we are playing a lot of Locke and his team. Do you feel like you're missing that piece, or?
Not necessarily. Chief is a cool character, like, but I don't miss him though. Like, Locke is not like a great character, or he hasn't like grown on me enough for me to consider him even a good character. But like, I don't know, like when you're actually playing it, like I don't even realize that I'm not Locke if I'm like I'm Kelly or someone else on that team. Like I'm not even realizing. I'm just kind of, I know I'm part of that team and I know what their pursuit is. Yeah, maybe there could have been a bit more Chief, but right now the pacing has been so good as far as the story beats that I don't think it's necessary, and I'd rather them not force a Chief mission in there when it's not needed, just to have more Chief. Also, one other thing, the Guardians are giving me a lot of Metal Gear vibes, and I think that's also helping a lot. Like you just see these giant fucking things in the sky, and immediately starting to think of Sahelanthropus from Metal Gear Solid 5 and what potentially could be a fun boss fight, but I doubt we'll get it in this game.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up 2 so much, because I felt the first time I played through this so much like I was replaying 2 in a way, or the ideas of 2 happening again. And I think that this one did a good job of kind of like starting to connect the old and the new in a way. I think that Infinite will probably do that a little bit deeper, but the idea that we see the Covenant a lot here, we see the Prometheans a lot here. We're seeing characters from the past like Buck from ODST being brought forward. I think all of that worked well to build the next step in Halo. What do you hope for Infinite, or expect in Infinite, that you're not seeing here?
Well, I do expect more missions where you just talk to 3 people, and then you get your experience points and you level up Chief. I'm very excited for when that happens in Infinite. That is so weird.
Yeah,
something happened in development, obviously.
Those were very weird.
Were they thinking like they could do these planets open world for a few missions and side quests, and then that's the home base, and that's where you get your quest fed to you, and then it was too late to pivot, but they knew they just do it for lore, and yeah, it seems like they had an idea for home bases, because they're very much built like, hey, this is where you could change your armor. Hey, this is where Halsey is to get your mission. Oh, you can go talk to this soldier for your side quest. Like, think of what the tower looks like in a much smaller scale.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that stuff gets pushed forward to Infinite.
I bet you. But yeah, that's where I'm at with Infinite. Like, just the open world. Like, from the time that whoever was playing as Chief pulled up that nav map, I was sold on that game, and I'm so ready for Far Cry Halo. And I can just kind of like, even if just kind of copy and paste what Far Cry does with the outpost, they can just put the Halo paint on it, put it and make it work into their lore, because Halo's lore is just much more vast than it's ever been now with the Prometheans and the Forerunners. Yeah, there's a lot of potential just in that open world, as long as they can keep it somewhat busy and not boring.
Yeah, I think it should be. I think, like you described The Witcher 3 a few months back, just that idea that everywhere you go there is something interesting to do. I'd hope for that in a Halo. And we're not quite at the end, but we're close to it. What do you think is next for you and Halo after 5?
I think I'm going to stick with 5 a little bit. I actually found myself going, even without you guys, going to Halo 5 multiplayer and just playing through the ranked stuff just to get my calibration, because I was so close to getting some of those calibrations from when me, you, and Mark played. I just wanted to complete some of them. And I am digging the multiplayer. I'm still not the greatest at it, but I can kind of hold my own. Like some games just go off, and other games just get fucking wrecked. You know, I'm still getting that together. I think I do want to replay that campaign, you know, with a little bit more pace as to us dying and waiting 60 seconds to respawn and all that other stuff. Maybe on heroic or something along those lines. But yeah, I part of me thinks I have to go back to 4 by myself as well, because I'm just missing so much of the Forerunners and Prometheans things that I like. That is such a large disconnect for me right now in the Halo lore, and I got the gist of it a little bit. I've watched a couple of videos explaining them, but I feel like I should maybe just re-experience it and have to go through 4 again by myself.
Or read the books.
Tell me talk about how fast. What's her name? Kelly's the fastest Spartan there ever was. It's funny. I made such a big deal talking to you guys about how they talked about that in that book, and then since then it hasn't happened. So that's funny.
There is I'll have to. Yeah, no, I sent it to you guys. There's a guy on Imager who recapped all of the Promethean stuff that I thought did a better job of explaining it than the game did. So poke at that and see if that still makes you want to go back to 4 or not. I'm not saying don't play 4, but
4 is my least favorite. I can tell you that.
Well, read that then. Give that a read. Take you 15 minutes, and then see if you want to play through an 8-hour campaign again. Well, outside of Halo 5, you've played a little bit more Call of Duty Warzone, I take it.
Yeah, I played a lot more Call of Duty Warzone. Yeah, I mean, nothing too big on the change front. Every Tuesday they put out their little update, and they put out some new things you can buy, like bundles and for operators and weapon skins and stuff like that.
You're back on PC in full?
Yeah, I'm back with PC. That weapon glitch is gone. I forgot we broke that news. Yeah, that is completely gone. Thank God. That was bad. That was real bad. So yeah, back on PC, the keyboard and mouse as well. That is really nice. What was I going with that? So they kept doing the ARG stuff up until Wednesday. And they like the little video or something on the screen. I didn't really follow it. I was more just kind of like reading more about it. They would give you like a coordinate on the map, like A6 or B2, where you can kind of land and put in these codes that you're getting from these ARG things and get like the next like video or whatever. Then it led, of course, to Wednesday, where you got the somewhat of a reveal, at least the official name of the game that Doritos didn't already tell us about.
Yeah,
and I was maybe expecting a little bit more with that, but I'm more curious to see what to do next week, because we're gonna get the full reveal of that next week. I know I'm kind of blending the news story into here a little bit, but
no, but it's all
I want to see what happens if they choose to do something with it right away, or they're just going to kind of completely forget about it, or just maybe keep hinting at it until it actually drops, which I'm going to assume it's going to be this year in November or October at some point. But yeah, no. But going into this, I finally checked for the first time in a long while some gameplay statistics of Call of Duty Modern Warfare for me, and I have my kill death average. It's always been the same. It's been like a 1.1. I'm not, I'm fine. I'm not great at these games. I've officially 12 dubs in Warzone. 2 of them are solo. But the thing, wins, dubs.
Gotcha.
Dubs.
I didn't know if you meant like doubles.
No. 12 wins, 2 solo. But the stat that really stuck out to me, and the way Xbox does it, or not, sorry, not Call of Duty does it, they put into days and hours. So, and they do it by section. So for the multiplayer, just the multiplayer section of Modern Warfare, I have clocked in just about 2 days worth, which, of course, with basic math, is about 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's a good chunk of time. With Warzone, I have put in 6 days and 16 hours.
Oh my God.
Combine that with the multiplayer, and you have yourself 208 hours of Call of Duty since launch, pretty much most of it being this calendar year because of Warzone.
All right, now I need to look and see, because I remember my brother putting in that amount of work on PUBG. And I don't remember how many hours did you just say? 680?
Take away 48 from 208, and that was just in Warzone. So, what's that? 170? 170 in Warzone. In Warzone. And that doesn't even include the 5 hours of the campaign.
My brother's at 490 in PUBG, but that's since 2018. But that was like, he would literally like come home from work and just fire it up and not stop until he went back to work.
Yeah, I've been playing it every night for a couple hours, and like now I'm like to the thing where it's like they've been doing pretty good work with the balance patches and stuff like that, where now I'm just like, well, I haven't leveled up this gun enough to make it viable in case it becomes the meta, so let me hop in a multiplayer while it's a double XP weapon, or a weapon double XP weekend, and grind out a couple of these weapons to a higher point, so that way if I ever need them, I can just, make a quick class and throw it together. So I've also been doing a lot of that lately. I've been experimenting with different weapons, not necessarily going with what the quote-unquote meta is. Just to do something different. But yeah, no, it's been a wild fucking ride, and it's not stopping. That train's not stopping anytime soon.
Do you think that's keeping it fresh for you, trying different weapons like that?
Yeah, a little bit. It is nice. I traditionally have always been like the sniper on the squad, but like more recently I've been doing AR, and it's making me play a little bit more differently, a little bit more aggressively, and then also just with the dumb weapons, like there's so many ways to do attachments, and not necessarily your perks. I feel like the perks you need in Warzone are very like, yeah, you can select any of the perks, but the realistic ones to use, you're very limited for what makes sense in Warzone. But with all the different weapon attachments, I feel like you can make a very varied gun just from one default thing. I just been messing around with that just to see what kind of dumb builds I can do and if I can make them effective or not. This is to the point where I kind of wish I had more custom loadout spots than 10. We're at that point now where it's like,
really?
Yeah, it was at that point where it's like it's like the card deck issues on a computer where like you need. I wish I had like 50 at this point just so. Huh. That way, like, instead of me just deleting one, I can just put it into, like, a bank and then just pull from it. You can, like, save your attachments for weapons and make them, like, a default thing. So that way, if you're copying and pasting that gun into a different class, you can just click on that saved loadout. So that saves some time. But, like, as far as, like, going through and picking the right grenade or making sure that this class has the right setup for your perks because you want to go ghost at this moment or whatever, that kind of gets a little tedious. I wish I can just pull from a bank if I just labeled them properly.
Do you think this is the most hours you've put into a single game?
Yeah, the only one that could compete is Modern Warfare 2, and a lot of that was just because of summer vacation and That was a brand spanking new PS3 fresh off of Christmas.
Yeah. Do you think, one final question, do you think that when Cold War comes out, do you think that takes over for you here? Like, do they?
I don't know,
but
this is the thing, right? Like, Call of Duty is back on the map for me, so Black Ops, Cold War is an easy day one buy now. Like there's no hesitation. I just need the release date so I know what to put my simple goal to. That's so like it's so weird how Call of Duty has just come back I mean, not just in general, but even just for me. Like, I never thought I would be playing this much Call of Duty ever again after Modern Warfare 2 or like and Black Ops 1.
Yeah, because it definitely started to dip over the last few years where they were kind of all blurring together and, you know. Well, we'll find out August 26th what that game fully is. Just 2 days before that, though, we'll get to see another Matt classic, NHL 21's first look happening on August 24th. How excited are you?
That's it.
So I thought about this week because I kind of heard, I've been doing a lot of, I guess, in my head stuff this week. But in my head, I heard a conversation with you where you said, I'm not buying it. And then I flash forward to a text message of like, okay, well, look, it was on sale. Like, I feel like that's always the thing with you. And I also feel like it's the way with the NHL community. So here's I posit this. What if you guys just didn't do that this year? I know
I didn't do this year.
Sale.
I've been good, Joe.
You didn't buy 20?
No,
20. You're clean of 20.
20. No, clean. No 20 in my life.
Because I realized the complaint is that the game is always the same, right? Or that somehow it's worse than the year before, sometimes. But then everybody buys it at the discounted rate, right?
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, what's happening is EA's being sent a message saying, hey, we're not going to buy this at $60, but we'll buy it at $30, or we'll buy it at $20. So give us a $20 experience, which is subpar and not great.
Well, they make all their money off the pack, so they can keep doing that. Yeah, there has been the itch twice in 2020 to buy it, and it was even on sale. It was probably like around like $12, $20 at this point, and I didn't. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. And that friggin' meme that I sent you with all the Spider-Man in a circle with the little NHL logos on top of them pointing at each other, that is very true. So, I mean, I'm curious to see if they rehaul anything or overhaul anything, like a franchise mode or be a pro. Like, if they actually did that and it looked cool, I would think about doing it again, but I don't see them doing that. I see them holding off on that stuff for their next-gen version next year. So I don't see me maybe probably buying this version again either, unless they do, I don't know, unless I really, really, really want the Seattle Kraken.
Well, we'll find out if NHL is going to get a big redesign on August 24th, which is today, as it turns out. But what is getting a new redesign is the entire Xbox experience. We talked a few weeks ago about overhauls to the Xbox Store, as shown off on Xbox Wire and through the Major Nelson podcast. But this week, Xbox showed what the UI looks like for the Xbox Series X and what will be, it'll move backwards to the Xbox One. But it looks like basically there's a new uniform design, and it'll extend to the iOS and Android apps as well. So sort of everywhere you interface with Xbox will have the same sort of DNA behind it. A lot of it is built on what's existing on the most recent iteration of the Xbox One dashboard, where everything happens vertically instead of kind of across different tabs. And everything seems, the visual design of it, or rather like the visual, like the font treatment they're doing, a lot of like window animations and things, all seem to be built on the latest Game Bar update. So if you've looked at Game Bar recently, it seems like a lot of it is coming from there on PC. Looking at this, did you look at it? Do you think, how do you feel about it? Like, I think it's clean. It's not exciting, but it's clean.
Yeah, it's definitely clean. I didn't dive into that article too much, but I saw the tiles, and I immediately appreciated that, because I really don't like Xbox One's UI. I don't like how so much of it. I feel like they get to the nitty gritty of the UI is like built into that little side panel that you have to bring out by hitting the Xbox button, and that just feels so frustrating. Like, all that stuff that you have to pull out in a little side panel and using literally like a third of your screen, like PlayStation's does, like right from the top. You just go up and it's all there, and it goes into these different menus and all that. And I just think that's so much cleaner than what Xbox has done. So I'm hoping this turns out a little bit more. But yeah, like I just want to get to my apps just a little bit quicker. I don't think it needs to be 3 button presses. Like PlayStations, they're all right there as soon as I start, and like the one that's in sleep, it's the first one to pop up if it does even go right into the game. So I mean, granted, Xbox does that, but it's just all right there, and you can do the infinite scroll, or you can put into folders. There's not the Xbox, you can't do it there, but it's all vertical, and I've tried doing that, and it's still not great.
I think I think the Xbox stuff right now, I think it's slightly too big. And now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if you can make that smaller. But all those boxes take up so much of the screen real estate that if they were just like a third of the size, or rather 2/3 of the size, I think that might change it. What do you hope between PS4 and PS5 stays consistent? Because this does seem like it's just a building on what the Xbox One already did. What do you hope stays from PS4, and what do you hope changes entirely?
I like I said, the tile stuff, I like having all that stuff right there. I actually kind of don't mind PlayStation's UI currently. I want them to do better things with folders than what is there, and I think that the opportunity there for that, like, I think if you like do folders, you could do what Xbox does and put it underneath maybe instead of having more options for that application. Because how often do you go into those options without accidentally hitting down?
Very
so
infrequently.
Like, I feel like there's room to grow, kind of going down like Xbox try to do, but I think there's a way to do it in a cleaner way. And like I said, Xbox's way wasn't bad. It's just getting to the nitty gritty stuff. I feel like all that was always in that 1/3 little side panel and not taking up my whole screen. And sometimes like I want to dig through the settings or get to the settings using my whole screen. But no, I feel like I was going to say, like, I feel like the PlayStation UI is pretty good right now. There's definitely steps they could take with folders and things like that, but I hope it is not too far removed from what it is currently.
Yeah, for me, it all comes down to speed. Like, I need to be able to move through it quickly.
It's speed 5 years from... quickly. No, not day one speed. I want, like, Call of Duty 170 hours of, like 5 years later speed. I was translating my days in Call of Duty to years for some reason. I don't know why. No, I want speed. I want that maintained all throughout too. And this is a longer term thing, but not just like when you update it, like make it work.
Yeah, because we're at the point now where like the PS4 is on its deathbed and it shows.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my console or just the UI. Like I
never know.
When I'm asking myself that question, I don't know what the answer is. Like, that's bad.
But I remember when the Xbox One X launched and the state of the dashboard at that point was where it was. I remember the first thing people were doing when they launched the Xbox One X is hit left bumper and right bumper to see how quickly it moved between, and it was just as slow as it was on the previous gen. So I don't think that this is necessarily our PS4s. I think it's just the way that UI has been bogged down with whatever. I think, like... The Switch obviously needs some stuff, but I think the Switch UI is so clean, so easy. I know how to get to my friends list, not that it matters. I know how to get through my library of games, and I can quickly jump just by hitting down to see screenshots, to see settings, all that stuff. It's all right there, super simple. So yeah, I hope PS5 keeps things speedy, but I think it also... we see PS4 kind of built on the cross-media bar of the PS3 and PSP a little bit. I hope PS5 kind of does that a little bit more.
What if...
I do like PS... Huh?
What were you about to say?
No, I like the PS4 eventually added that PlayStation Plus section. So you can quickly jump in and just grab the monthly games if you want, or it shows you what things you have available. So I hope stuff like that gets added in. If PlayStation Now takes more of a front seat next generation, like I think Game Pass has, and I think PlayStation Now should, I would like to see that stuff integrated more cleanly into the UI. But
yeah, what if we gave the Vita life and just made the PlayStation 5 bubbles?
No, that was the worst part about the Vita. In fact, I haven't done it because I really like having an operating Vita, and I'm worried about jailbreaking any of that stuff or putting a custom firmware on it. But I've seen people do custom firmware to Vitas that give them the cross-media bar, and I'm like, man.
The XMB was so good.
But the XMB on a Vita would be healthy, I tell you what. We'll see. We'll see. Well, Matt, speaking of PlayStation 5 evolutions, we got our first look at a PlayStation 5 commercial. This one shows a woman on an adventure. She has a bow and arrow that she shoots. She plays with some fire. It's a PlayStation 5 controller. The thing here that they emphasize is how different the controller is going to be with the DualSense. And
the immersion.
what it's going to allow.
The immersion.
Yeah, it's going to immerse you in the games. You're going to feel the controller differently. And the write-up, the press release for this ad, they really put this like strong emphasis on the word global, which that stuck out to me over anything else they were doing, just because I think watching the DC Fandome stuff this weekend, they put a big emphasis on the idea of being a global event for people. And I think they did it right. Like, they had presenters from all over the world speaking in every language across the world where they were presenting this material. And they also were pulling in interactions from fans globally. And I think that DC did it really well, where I think that PlayStation, they kind of internally have restructured. They've kind of redistributed internal teams, but like, I still don't get a strong sense of like this global brand or identity within PlayStation. I think they're still growing and adapting. That's a side note. I just kind of, I don't know, that stood out to me as I was reading that press release. But the commercial shows the idea of how the DualSense controller changes video games. The actual like blog post on PlayStation blog that details this, I thought it was cool because they put a lot of examples of how the DualSense stuff will translate into games. So I grabbed some of the ones I thought were pretty interesting. So this comes from Brian Horton, the creative director on Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. He says that we'll be hinting to players which direction attacks are coming from by providing haptic feedback from the appropriate direction in the DualSense controller, which that's cool. Like, it's Spidey sense built into the controller. And then he talked about if you hold down square to do the Venom punch, you'll feel Spider-Man's bioelectricity crackle across from left side to right side of the controller as it goes from like the crackle to the impact of the punch. So that was really, I thought that was a neat, like, okay, yeah, we're actually translating how Spider-Man works into this controller, which that one and the ones I'm about to read, all of this stuff, I hope that it stays and doesn't become the touchpad where like it's just glorified vibrate. You know what I mean? Like the touchpad, a lot of developers were doing cool things with it early on too, but then it kind of just became a big
opens
button.
up your roadmap.
Yeah, you know, we'll shake it to feel
Which
the
Ghost of
world
Tsushima
back.
does not do. Another complaint about that game.
What do they use the touchpad for?
You swipe it left, I think, for the wind. There's a flute mechanic about changing the time of day, I think. One's to call your horse. Yeah, they fucked that up.
Well, game director Dinga Bakaba on Deathloop says, one I like is blocking the triggers when your weapon jams to give the player an immediate feedback even before the animation plays out, which prompts the player in a physical way that they have to unjam their gun. I thought that was so rad. Like, what a weird, cool use of that technology.
One, I never even thought about gun jam in a video game, period, because that never happens besides overheating. But two, the fact that I wouldn't even be able to pull the trigger is I'm more excited for Deathloop. More on that later.
And that changes your approach to playing games too, because now you will feel it in the same way that your character's experiencing.
You will be
so
immersed.
It'll be another level of immersion, and that makes me wonder what the next level of PlayStation VR is going to be, and like what the next iteration of VR controllers is going to be for PlayStation, and how they'll integrate some of that stuff into development. Gavin Moore, creative director at Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan Studio, says we can turn the simple act of pulling a lever to open a gate into a sensory experience. Rumble could never replicate the feeling of metal striking metal or fire crackling in your hand as you conjure magic. That part stood out to me a little bit. Just the idea of, I don't know, like the Conjuring piece, those things. I think this was talking about Dark Souls Remastered specifically. Is that what it's called? Demon Souls. Sorry, Demon Souls Remastered. But they were talking about how you're doing things in that world and you're kind of feeling it happen. So a sword hit, like the way that the haptic feedback will happen differently than what just standard Rumble would do. And then finally, Nicolas Doucet, studio director at Japan Studio, talks about Astrobot, the new one for PS5. The most striking are the surfaces because players will notice within the first few seconds, Astro's steps can be felt running on plastic, metal, sand, and even splashing in water. And I just thought about that, like the fact that you'll be able to feel what quicksand feels like maybe, or those types of things in games where for so often you have to imagine it. And you do get, I think developers have done interesting things in terms of rumble or slowing, like how quickly your character can move depending on what they're walking in. Obviously, famously, we know like gravity shifts with Mario when he's swimming versus when he's above ground. But this is something, entirely different where you're getting a physical response to being in a different environment. There were a few others, but honestly, they were pretty boilerplate. I was kind of disappointed with the Horizon one.
I mean, we all knew what was happening with that one. Come on.
No, but they didn't say anything. They didn't even give an example. They just said, like, we're excited about how the controller is going to be immersive. It was, like, the most...
We all know they're going to pull the string.
I know that, but, like, everyone else gave these really rad examples of whatever, and then it was, like, one of the marquee titles here, and it was just like... Okay.
So with that, like these examples kind of got me thinking of like things that could, I'm thinking about like titles today that could have benefited from it, and I'm just like it got me thinking of one example, and I'll go first to let you think. But like, what game have you been playing now that you could like incorporate all this DualSense stuff into it? And like the first thing I thought of was Rallyman 131 over here racing. And the fact of like pulling the trigger on the gas pedal, but getting some of that resistance that you actually do get on a gas pedal, and then also like having the vibration or the haptics in a way where like without knowing or seeing that your car is loose or tight, like feeling that almost when you're on the track, and you get that vibration when you're playing like a NASCAR Heat or F1. But it's something like I feel like with the focus on the haptics in this controller and putting a focus on it, I feel like you could really get a sense of like how your car is doing and actually feel when like your tires are getting worn somehow, or like some other signal for like gas and other things. I think that something like that could really put something into perspective if you don't have the whole get up of a steering wheel, the gear shift, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think driving games are going to benefit from this stuff in a big way. I think there's a lot of creative stuff they could do. I think the tire wear, that'd be an interesting one. Yeah, it gives more or something, or it feels slippery or something. Like
you can feel like it goes into your car feeling more loose and not like you losing grip on the track. There's something you can do there.
So I started playing Luigi's Mansion 3 again this last week, and they do some good stuff with the HD Rumble in the Joy-Con or the Pro Controller, whichever you're using. But I think if you could go even further with that, with like the triggers, like I think there should be a noticeable difference between the feeling of the vacuum or the spraying of water, right? Or like, and I think the HD Rumble does a good job of demonstrating like what it feels like to suck in air versus push out air. But I think the triggers could do even more in that way. I think I would love to feel whatever the DualSense haptic feedback is for creating Gooigi. I want to know what that. I want to feel Gooigi, in my hands. I also think, so I jump back into Injustice 2, and that one, I think, thinking about Deathloop and how they could block the trigger from even being used, I think that could add another layer to fighting games where if you're actively blocking and ducking, you can't input button. Like you couldn't, because right now you can kind of do that stuff and you can like poke as you're blocking, but I think it'd be interesting to completely block player input if you are blocking.
Like go the opposite way with it, like just disable all the other buttons while that's being held.
It's a thought. I don't think it would actually translate well to make it a good game, but those are like weird things that if I were making those games, I would at least try out and see what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, like, I'm just trying to think of how we can implement more gun jams in the games now. It causes one little thing, like, port gears to PlayStation and block my gun when I can't do the reload thing right.
Yeah, right. And well, I don't think Xbox is doing something that different
No,
with
they're
the new
not.
controller.
But I'm just thinking of like another game that had like a jam mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I've been playing a lot of Demon's Tilt also, so I think pinball with a DualSense, you get a lot of that feedback from, I think feeling on either the right or the left side, like as you're pressing each trigger. I think that would be interesting.
So with the talk, we got a tease of a commercial, we got a tease of UI, no price, still no price. This got me thinking. I put on my tinfoil hat, my Dale Gribble hat. Yeah. I have a theory here, Joe.
Hit me.
We're 14 weeks away from Black Friday, which means we're probably roughly 10, 11 weeks away from a console launch. Still no price. Are the companies really playing chicken with one another, or do they secretly not want us to buy their console? Think about this.
Yeah.
These consoles are going to be very expensive at launch, so you will want to start to save your money, but if you don't know how much to save for, it makes it hard to save, right? Because of that, people probably won't save money in time, and they won't be able to get these consoles. And they want to do that because they won't have enough consoles at launch due to COVID, and they don't want the bad PR there being a shortage of consoles, even though it does create demand. But I think in this case, it's going to just be bad PR. People are going to say they should have just waited to 2021. And then, on top of that, Xbox now doesn't have a launch title, or at least a first-party one. PlayStation's is a spin-off of a marquee title. You might get Demon's Souls launch day. Probably not. It's probably going to be launch window. A new rumor came out about that still being a launch title, so keep that in mind. But then, and then now, instead of, you had soft numbers at launch, all you had to do in an investors meeting is just blame COVID. You can probably do that for the next 4 years.
Sure. I think you're on to something. So did you hear about the Monster Energy Xbox price reveal that potentially happened?
What?
All right. So Xbox did that partnership with Monster Energy to the Halo thing. The details of the contest. It was, I can't remember the exact numbers. You can look it up and read the thing, but it's basically like the total prize amount was listed in the terms and conditions, and there's a certain number of people who will win an Xbox Series X. So people did the math. So many winners divided into the total prize pool. It comes out that the Xbox Series X is $600. So that's probably on the high side. If I were to guess, I would say that Microsoft probably told them that or whatever when they were making that deal. But
so the thing with that is, does that include a controller? Does that include a game? Does that include Game Pass or something like that?
Pretty sure it was just the Series. It's probably just whatever you would get if you walked into a store and bought a Series X, period. So 6 seems like an overshot. I bet they want to sell that thing at $5. But I bet if Sony comes in at $5, they'll cut it to $450, which is also, I don't know. But I think you are not wrong at all. I don't think there's going to be many of these consoles in the wild. I think it's going to be a PR or an internal PR success story. We sold out. Look how good we're doing. We sold all of our units. But I think that numbers wise, how many units sold, I think that's a different story. I think the thing is, right, when I think about consoles selling out at launch and the demand and hype around it, I think about the Wii and how big that was. And was the Switch that way? The Switch was kind of that way for a little bit, but not entirely. It was not like the Wii, right? The Wii, you couldn't get steadily for like years.
Yeah.
And I think the difference there is the Wii had the game, right? It had Wii Sports. Like that was the draw for that. It was the draw for people to have that in the home, people outside of just people who were going to play Twilight Princess. You had Wii Sports. And I think there's not that thing for either of these consoles. And I don't think there's that thing for either of these consoles in the next year even, right? Like Halo's kind of there, but I think in terms of like that widespread scarcity and what you'd want in like making your console attractive across the board, I don't think that's there for either of these consoles for years to come, if at all. I think we're at a point now where a dedicated console like that is a luxury item for people who really want it. And I think for people who, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think the amount of competition in the living room these days is far greater than just an Xbox or a PS5. I think that people's phones, I think people's TVs themselves, I think the streaming services, I think all of that stuff is what's really competing here against this. And I think something like Game Pass counters that even greater. But I think these boxes aren't it. I don't think these boxes are ever going to be it. I think I could totally be wrong too, because I remember at the end of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 life cycle thinking that there was no way that this following generation was going to do what it did. And here we are, like PS4 has sold a really healthy amount of consoles in the wild to the general audience. So I could be totally wrong. I feel like both of these boxes are too niche still to cater to the widespread. I think you have like the pocket of people who kind of follow this stuff and know this stuff, and right, that's they're in no matter what. I think you have the next circle of people, like the ones who will loosely just pick up, they're fans of games, they will play games, but like they're certainly happy buying a PS5 a couple years from now when it's bundled with whatever. Like the number of people I remember buying a PS4 for the first time after Spider-Man came out, and then they went back and got caught up on all the stuff that had come out. Those are the people I think don't care. I think those are the people where you make your millions of consoles sold, but those people aren't going to be there this fall anyway, or next fall, or the fall after for that matter. Like they're not buying a PS5 or an Xbox Series X until there's been a few iterations of them down the line, because they just got their PS4. They still got all this stuff to play. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And maybe this number is so minimum, but like with COVID and everyone, all the hardware makers announced their sales were up. I mean, just look at video games across the board from Activision to Sony. All of them said their hardware and their software were all up during this. I wonder how many people were originally holding out, knowing there was something new coming down the pipeline, and they were like, "Well, screw it, I'm in the house now. Like, let me just get PS4 Pro or an Xbox now because I got nothing else to do, for the next month or whatever." So, the fact that you'd be so late to the party, I think that number's small, but I wonder if there are, a couple 100,000 units sold there maybe potentially day one or launch month that now are out because of the situation. So
don't forget the Switch also. I think that the Switch sold really well throughout all of this, not just because of Animal Crossing, but also because of Animal Crossing. And I wonder how many people who, those kind of like casual purchasers of this stuff where like they don't have any like strong brand allegiance. It's, you know what I mean? Like there's none of that. Yeah. They just know that like the PlayStation plays the game, so they bought it. How many of those people bought a Switch and are finding stuff like, oh, there's Crash Bandicoot. Oh, there's Spyro. How many of those people are doing all that stuff on Switch that would have otherwise done it on an Xbox or a PS4? And how many of those people have yet to buy anything that are going to end up buying a Switch this fall when all the new stuff is sold out? Because this fall, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I bet, okay, bet is a tough one here. I hope that Nintendo has a direct soon and announces some stuff for the fall. Because we really have nothing outside of Pikmin, and that's not going to sell Switches. But if you can't, if all that stuff we heard about 6 months ago is real, the Mario Galaxy remasters, the Mario Sunshine, the Mario 64s, then that's another argument because it's, or not argument, but it's another thing where like the Switch could be the thing that sells the most this fall. Just because the sheer numbers, like you say, aren't there.
The units.
And Switch is already kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Animal Crossing did wonders, and you just look at our significant others would have never gotten a Switch this year if it weren't for Animal Crossing, and then you go now and you just expand upon that. You got all the all the buzz, all the word of mouth, and then people that's going to translate, I think, to Christmas this year.
Yeah.
And then, on top of that, I think the Switch is an easy sell because there is so much on that platform, both first and third party. Like, you can just go back in time at this point. I'm right there with you. I think the Switch is going to outsell everyone this Christmas, this holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I got a little sidetracked from the original question there, but I think I don't think you are wrong. I think that there's probably a lot of those decisions being made based on how many units can be produced this year. I think there's probably a lot of calls that these higher ups have to make about who to send what and where. Because remember, both of these are launching globally too, right? Like last time around when we had a lot of these big shortages, like thinking back to the Wii, that was for like the Japanese and North American launch. Like other territories didn't get it for, way long after. I think, I'm trying to remember a couple of, I don't know, like even prior to that, you think back to like PS2 and like it launched in Japan 6 months before it launched here. So that was different too. But yeah, launching globally with that amount of, I'm curious to see. I'm also like preemptively happy that I'm making the call not to go crazy trying to get one this year because
I'm going down that path, sadly.
I'm sorry.
But I am.
See, but if you could find it online, that would be great. That'd be ideal, right? And then not have to worry about the bloodbath of being I don't know. As much as I loved that Switch experience,
that's not the experience every time. I think I got lucky. I think I'm a good 1-for-1.
Well, why don't we take a break? We have a few more news stories, one more game to check in with, but we'll do one more quick break and we'll come back and talk about some game delays, some game additions happening this year. Be right back. Matt, speaking of Switch, Golf Story is a pretty popular indie title over there on the Nintendo Switch, and we heard Sports Story was being developed to be released this year. We found out this week the game ideas the developers are coming up with are getting bigger and a little more difficult to realize, and the game is now being pushed to 2021. You bummed about this? You were probably the most likely to jump into this.
Yeah, it's a little. I mean, that's another thing for the Switch that I can't get this year now, right?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's one of them make a good game. They got better ideas, or they're bigger and better, or whatever. Let them have the time. There's no reason to rush something like this. It's not like a big AAA thing with a bunch of events. Granted, it's an indie studio, so they live and die on this stuff. But they can. I think they have a little less pressure from other outside parties than some of this other stuff. Yeah, let them develop it. I am excited about this game. Golf Story is a bunch of fun. It fizzles out at the end. I think it just kind of could have been a little bit shorter because it's just golf. But the fact that it's all the sports.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This seemed like it was taking that idea and going somewhere with it. And the fact that it's being delayed for that reason is, I think, a little more exciting. It's like, hey, we want to do a lot more with this and make sure it's the right game. Deathloop, on the other hand, delayed, citing, of course, COVID as reason for, the work from home kind of hit the studio hard. This is exactly what we figured would happen back, not for this game in particular, but for many games. Like, we saw games starting to roll out beginning of the kind of shelter-in-place orders earlier this year across the globe. But we figured that Q3, Q4, which we're getting into now, would be the parts that got hit the heaviest. And now it seems like that's happening. So Deathloop delayed into Q2 of 2021. My question with this, it kind of goes back to your question before with the PS5 and Xbox Series X launch, but like, what's up with the lineup for this year? Like, do you think that this is the last thing to get delayed, or do you think it's just another in the line of delays that are going to hit these launch titles for both consoles?
I'm fully expecting Cyberpunk to go into 2021.
Yeah.
I'm more waiting for the day that happens, more so than hoping it doesn't happen. But there's not much, like, that launch lineup is not. It's not there, and that's a big blow. But Bethesda itself needs a win. So, delay it and make a good game, please. I have faith in that studio. That was another thing. People keep talking about Deathloop. I was thinking a little bit about Prey and Arcane. And Dishonored went on sale on Steam. I gave that a game a shot, and I'm like, revisit that maybe while I'm waiting for Deathloop. I don't know. I just feel like I missed out on that game. Here's such good things about it.
I didn't like the first Dishonored. Dishonored 2 seemed more interesting, and I installed that on Game Pass a few weeks ago. I played the tutorial mission and like a little bit of the beginning, and I was just bored. I think that was just my frame of mind. I was in that frame of mind where I was insatiable. I kept jumping from game to game, and like nothing was scratching the itch that I had. So I blame that more on me. But it's on Game Pass. It wouldn't cost you anything to try out too. Do you think it matters with the launch lineup? I mean, like you said, the amount of consoles that are likely to launch, probably not the numbers that either company would have wanted, but also, I don't know, like, do you think we just talked about people still playing things from this generation. Like, are you still going to be playing Ghost of Tsushima and Warzone to even notice that there's not a launch lineup? And I know for you, like, you're going to buy a PS5 no matter what, but like, do you think that across the board it matters? Like, people who do get a PS5, do you think that, I don't know. I think someone buying a PS5 this year knows very well what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, they're not.
Yeah.
So does it matter that there's not anything there at the launch?
I think Xbox took a serious blow, but they can buff, like, they can just puff out their chest and say, we have Game Pass, we have all these games on here, so many of them are going to be on Xbox Series X day one or whatever they want to do. And then, like I said, I think I said it last week, where I said they can go the route, if they are the more powerful console, going out and saying, hey, look, we run at, a better native resolution at this frame rate than PlayStation 5. Like, that's the rumor, right? So, PlayStation 5 might not have that. The tentpole for me in that PlayStation 5 day one, if I really care, is Miles Morales. If that slips, I'm seriously thinking about, am I buying a console this year? The answer is probably still yes, because I can probably get it easier now. But it's that is the tentpole that is holding up my. I kind of really want this day one.
Do you think stuff like Deathloop impacts other people's desire for it, or is that not a blip on the radar?
For me personally, it wasn't a blip on the radar. It would have been cool to have, but that's also one of those things where I'll probably end up getting on my PC because it's not console exclusive for me. I'm just in that scenario. But like, I think when you make a purchase like this, like especially everyone that's doing it at at this very moment, day one, you look at the launch lineup, you look like, well, is it worth me spending it now? And then do I have all these games to play in that next 2 months or whatever? Or like, all right, I spend $500 now, but it's gonna be a waste because I have nothing to play for 8 months. I have nothing to play the next fall or whatever that looks like. I think, like you said earlier, the educated buyer is the one buying this day one, and I think they're already kind of thinking about that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Deathloop was on their radar, and I know I'm in the unique position where I have a PC to go to, but there's, that didn't happen for me until 2 years ago. So there's a lot of people in that boat that just rely on console. So it's something to think about.
Well, speaking of PlayStation exclusive, Ghost of Tsushima is getting a new mode called Legends, a new online cooperative multiplayer mode. It'll be a free download, separate entirely from the story, does not follow Jin or any of the companions from the main campaign, but instead focuses on 4 warriors who were legends in the stories told by the people of Tsushima. Seems like there's more emphasis on cooperative combat and takes place in locations that are more fantastical when compared to the more natural landscape of Sucker Punch's version of Tsushima. How do you feel about that one? I mean, does that... Your face is not... Okay.
Hey, no one's gonna play with me. One, no one's gonna play with me, even if I wanted to play it. 2, the well's kind of dried up for me on Ghost of Tsushima, and I really just think it was the open world and the mood I was in. I do want to go back to that game, but I also said that about Days Gone, and I never got back to that game either. So I don't know. Yeah. Hey, maybe I'll play on my PlayStation 5 when I got nothing to play on it this fall.
There you go. You and the handful of other people can jump into the co-op stuff, because that's the one thing about this co-op is that it is co-op. You cannot play this by yourself. You can, but you'll be paired up with someone online.
Yeah.
Speaking of online co-op,
I was going to say, I don't see that PlayStation 4 handling 2 playable characters on the screen at the same time, because that thing is about to play Microsoft Flight Simulator when I launch Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah. Untitled Goose Game is getting a free co-op update. And I think I wrote this down wrong, but it does not have online co-op, much like Battletoads. So local only, but 2 geese running around in the world, if that's your bag.
I don't know. I don't necessarily need the online co-op, because then that brings into, well, why can't you do cross-gen and all this other stuff if they don't want to do that? I think this is the perfect couch co-op game. Like, I know Victoria had been saying she wanted to play it, and now, like, guess what? We're going to both play it now. Yeah, so that's exciting. This game, it is a lot of fun. You literally you run around as a goddamn goose. In this case, it's going to be geese, and you just wreak havoc, and you just laugh out loud for a couple of hours. It's a good time.
That was news out of the Nintendo Indie presentation from this week. Did you watch any of that?
I didn't even realize it happened until it was too late. I didn't feel like going back to it.
I put it on while I was installing Flight Sim the other day for 45 hours. And just caught it. So I think a lot of the games that did launch are on sale right now, for at least the intro week. I thought they had some interesting looking games. Again, speaking about that kind of like global idea, there were a lot of titles from developers all around the world, telling stories from all around the world, which are really cool. Nothing. I think the big one that a lot of people were stoked about is that game Hades from I can't remember. That was the
Epic Game Store exclusive, right?
It was on there while it was in early access. Now the 1.0 version is going to be launching on Switch this fall. The one I remember watching, because I was kind of in and out of paying attention to it, but Raji, an ancient epic, looked really pretty. And I think they were doing some cool stuff with the art direction in that game. That's out now. I thought about grabbing that one. There's another one that dropped, but it also came out on Game Pass, so I think I'm going to grab it on Game Pass, and I don't remember the name of it now. Yeah, I can't remember. And then Hypnospace Outlaw was also shown off for Switch. Supports keyboard and mouse on Switch, which is nuts. At least that was what Mark told me. I haven't tried it, and I don't know if he's tried it or not, but that's there. They've also added like 2 hours of music to it. They've added new challenges and puzzles and things, and that'll also be out on Game Pass when it comes out on Switch on the 27th. So I think I'm going to be diving into some Hypnospace this week because I never did get around to that one. But yeah, Indie World, that happened, I think that was Tuesday. And we also got a new story here, Matt, from Sega. This is during a Q&A with investors. Sega stated that repeat sales of its catalog increased significantly in March and April this year. Like you were talking about, a big lift in software and hardware this year. It slowed in June and July compared, but still sat higher than the same period, June, July 2019. Specifically, sales of the PC port for Persona 4 Golden were significantly higher than expected, and it has influenced Sega's strategy moving forward. We got a quote here. Going forward, we intend to aggressively promote the porting of previous launched titles to Steam and other new platforms. So that begs the question, besides Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which Sega game needs a port and where should it be ported to?
I immediately screamed Shenmue. And then I realized, oh shit, I'm playing on PC already. So that's not the answer. I did a little bit of digging, and not necessarily Sega, but within the Atlas family and within the same games, like, where's Persona 1 and 2 at? No one ever talks about those games. And I would be, like, not that I would probably be the first one to buy it, but, like, I would be curious to maybe jump into them if they did land on a Game Pass or they got it free somewhere on a Humble Bundle. Like, I would maybe launch it just to see, like, kind of where that series stems from and its origins and stuff like that. And everyone talks about 4's the golden child, no pun intended with golden. And then I know 3 was on PS2, but, like, no one ever talks about 2 and 1. I'm curious to see, like, what those were. You know, the little blast from the past.
3 had that really good PSP version, but also 1 and 2 had PSP remakes that I think could easily be ported over to Switch or something like that. That, yeah, I think would be interesting gets. Because 1 and 2 are way more in line with where the series, because those are all Persona's a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei games, so that's all part of that. You have a lot more of that, like, raw DNA really apparent in the first and second game. But yeah, even, like, I've spent time in that franchise, but I never played 1 or 2. So yeah, I think it's a good answer. Now, thinking about that, does that intrigue you about playing the remake of Shin Megami Tensei 3 when it comes out to Switch later this year?
I was thinking about it. I've never hopped. I've said a few times now at this point because you bring it up from time to time. Like, I've never played those games, but, like, why not? I don't know. I can get weird. Yeah. And what else am I going to play this year? That's my new line. What else am I going to play this year?
I just realized it's coming out this year in Japan. I keep getting that screwed up because there's, like, ads for it in Tokyo and stuff, but it's coming out next year in. Oh, well, then States.
I'll have Deathloop by then.
Yeah, that's true. I think the House of the Dead series needs a good push back.
That was my original answer, but that is on Steam.
I want Sega to sell me a dumb peripheral to plug Joy-Con into, and I want to play House of the Dead on my Switch on the TV.
That's funny because that was my original answer. I was going to say do stupid stuff with VR.
That too, yeah, that's fine. Or just honestly, like, do it with move the sticks to aim the reticle. I'm fine with that too. Those House of the Dead games are so much fun and just so easy. I think, and you could easily do, like, a collection of, like, 5 of them in one bundle and put it out there. I think that would work well. Well, Matt, it is time for another edition of our weekly segment, Who Would Win in a Fight? We are, after this episode, halfway through our first round of brackets. We still have a ways to go.
Yeah, I know.
On this one. But, let's see. You want to pick a number this week?
Will this line up with our game of the year? Just question.
Sure, probably. It's probably close to that.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up to you. You want to pick a number this week, or do you want me to just kind of pick one?
Just throw it out there.
All right. I'm thinking I want to know who would win between Gygus from Earthbound and Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. Who would win in a fight?
You threw my first true... Well, I mean, I know Kefka is. I don't know him all that well. God... All he is just a fetus, though.
Gygus?
Yeah.
But he's the pure embodiment of fear, right? Yeah, like, he's fear incarnate.
Give me a brief synopsis on Kefka, because I need that right now before I can just say Gygus blindly.
Kefka becomes, think like Sephiroth at the end of 7.
I figured as much. That's my loose
Kefka's
base.
kind of got that thing. Kefka becomes like a demigod, or a god even, in that way. And just ascends to the heavens and has total chaotic control. I mean, he destroyed the world. Kefka becomes pretty all-powerful in that way. But Gygus will kill you just by thinking that he's real.
Yeah, I know. That. Now you got me want to play Earthbound again.
You're welcome. Just play Mother 3.
I don't know what it is. That's the game is not in the United States. I don't know. We weren't global back then, you know. Man, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm about to go fucking Harvey Dent and flip a coin.
I was gonna say, flip a coin.
I'm gonna... You know what, though? It took... This is the deciding factor. Kids. Oh, but they had extraordinary powers.
They did have extraordinary powers.
I'm gonna go... I was about to say kids beat Gygus. And a band of heroes beat Kefka. But the kids had extraordinary powers. Especially Pauline. Yeah, I'm gonna go Gygus here.
Alright. Gygus takes the win. We got some interesting fights cooking up here. I will say that so far, none of your choices are going to square off with one another quite yet.
Okay.
We're still in...
Okay.
We still have... now we have the other 4 in those brackets to go after. So that's going to start to shape out a little bit here. Interesting. I'm excited to see how this continues. Sorry, I got to swap notes here. That's my hidden note that Matt can't see while we're recording. Outside of that, Matt, my final bit of the week, unless you have anything else to throw out, I played the future of esports. Right here. So there's a big esports update that happened for Taiko no Tatsujin Drum and Fun, which is that Namco Bandai drum rhythm game that I bought on Switch a few months back. Out of nowhere, dude, this thing just gets an update called the Esports Tournament Update. So, Esports Tournament, it's an online competitive gameplay mode. Previous to this, you did have online mode where you could jump in and play ranked matches against folks. But now they do bracket style, not unlike deciding who would win in a fight. There's bracket style. You play a round, and it's a randomly selected song. And it could be from DLC songs, it could be from whatever, but it's usually like they have like a weekly batch of songs that they pull from, and they rotate that out every week. So everyone's kind of on the same playing field, because if you're practicing those songs, you can kind of prepare for what might happen. Then the second round it's the second round is 2 rounds, and so is the third round. So first elimination, it's just one song. There you go. Second round, it's the best of 2 songs, and you each get to play the other's preferred battle song. And then the final round is the same deal. You and your opponent, you play through each other's secondary battle song. The winner gets a gold medal. A runner-up gets a silver medal. You get icons and greetings that you use in online tournaments. So it's just like little avatars and stupid things like that. So they do... I think the commentary is funny. Like they have the little master Baccio in the... He's like a little sticks, the little drumstick character. They have him doing commentary over it, which is like... Some of it's kind of like repetitive and... I don't know, just whatever, but I think it's cute what they do with it. When you lose, it automatically dumps you back in to watch the next round, which I kind of hate because you can leave once you're watching it, but you have to like forcibly choose to quit rather than just it kind of like asking you if you want to watch.
Fall Guys kind of, and I don't know if it's just due to weird PC glitches, but you kind of, that does the same thing there.
I kind of wish it would just be like, hey, you lost. Do you want to watch the rest of this or find a new round? Like, I just wish that would pop up. So what I noticed this week is that I need to probably buy the drum from Play Asia. It's not sold in America, but the only problem I have is it's $69 plus 33 shipping, which is like, am I going to stick with this game long enough to warrant spending $100 to import a drum controller? Or am I going to get tired of it after a couple? I don't know.
Or he's going to beat the bongos while your neighbor does construction.
Ongoing, like we gotta let's create some harmony here between him and I. So I don't know. I think that's kind of where it's leaning because I jumped in and my inclination is to do motion controls because it seems like the most fun to do the Switch motion controls, but they're either too touchy or not touchy enough when you're doing motion. So this game, it's only 2 drum patterns you have, the dun and the ka. So the dun is when you're hitting the main part of the drum and the ka is like a rim shot. So to do it with a Joy-Con, you have to swing straight down for the dun, and the ka, they tell you to do a 45-degree angle. You have to kind of arc your hand. But like, dude, I can't. And the idea is like you're imagining either hitting straight on the drum head or hitting the side of it. But I've tried so many different ways, and like it's always picking up false movements or if I just go like this and move my arms, this is not playing well on an audio show, but if I swing my arms down without any sort of momentum, it doesn't pick up that I've moved the Joy-Con at all. So it doesn't recognize horizontal movement. You have to give it that kind of jerk motion, but if you jerk too hard, then like there's a double jerk happening and it triggers 2 hits, which for a rhythm game, you need precision, and the motion controls are not precise at all. They're like actively bad. So I've gotten really good at the button controls, or I've gotten better at the button controls, I should say. But I think I might buy the dumb drum controller.
Hey, that's all right.
The tournament mode, it is a fun way to kind of challenge other players. In addition to standard online play, I jumped into some online play and done that. I think that the esports tournament mode, it takes a while so I took notes for the podcast midway through the week trying this out because this dropped, I think, on Wednesday, and I think I started it Thursday night. So I take notes for it Thursday night about my experience with it, and it was taking a really long time to load in and find 7 other players to play with. But eventually, it either would or it wouldn't. And when it didn't, it just kicked you back to the menu and said, sorry, can't find people. So I waited a little while until I knew that this is primarily going to be played in Japan, not here. So I waited until it was like in the morning the next day in Japan. So maybe some kids would be jumping in or something. And I did get a little bit better luck, but even that, not great. But it was a bummer because if you didn't connect with all 7 other people, it just threw you all back to even if you had 6 out of 8, threw you back to the main menu and said try again. And what would happen is the same 6 of you would be in the lobby sitting there waiting for other people to jump in. So I wrote the notes and I was kind of like, that's where it was. And then since then, playing it again, I've noticed I don't know if they patched it or if they've just whatever, but now there's computer players filling those dead spots. So you're at least getting paired up with computer players in the meantime to fill the tournament brackets and play that way. But yeah, I found myself playing that even outside of the esports mode, playing that a whole bunch this weekend, just as partially as an exercise, because I was jumping in and still trying the motion controls, even though they're not working at all. But also, it's just fun discovering a lot of those songs. And the more you play, the more songs you unlock. So I'm getting a wider library to choose from. It's been a lot of fun. With that, Matt, that is the show.
I think I forgot to say last week, I bought Fall Guys on Steam.
Oh, wow. How's that?
Good. I think that purchase made me realize what a next-gen console could do.
Oh, what?
No, I'm just saying, like, Fall Guys is such a simple-looking game on PlayStation 4, right? Like, it is what it is. It looks good. But then you put it on PC, and you can just tell, like, it looks a little bit better here. It's a little bit brighter. It could be just the 1440p monitor, but, things look... It looks a little bit better. It looks a little crisper.
You should plug your PS4 into the monitor and see if it makes a difference.
I don't think it can go past 1080.
Well, just even displaying on that monitor.
Huh.
And just see.
Maybe.
Well, this week, what are you jumping into?
Well, I gotta get to the 7th day in Warzone, so I'm gonna keep playing... keep playing that. Batman's been in my life here a little bit. Expect a Batman game of some kind, I think, at some point. Because I'm itching for one now.
If you are going to end up buying one, this is the week because everything's on sale across every platform.
Yeah, seeing the Riddler and Forever versus the Arkham Riddler, I was like, I could rather get some of that Riddler than Arkham,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm already back in on City. I am in Wonder City, chasing Ra's al Ghul's blood trail or whatever, that whole part. So I'm in it. It's just a fun game.
I wonder if you go back to Night and just do New Game Plus. I never did any of that. Let's just pick up my save, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
I know the combat works.
Yeah.
Does it turn off the things?
I think in New Game Plus it does, yeah.
I've done enough combat. I think I got it.
It's funny, like, going back to it, I feel better at it now than I ever did. So, you got it. You'll be all right. This is the final week before everything drops. We get Tony Hawk the week after. We get Marvel's Avengers the week after. Yeah.
Can't wait for that one.
I don't know. It's probably going to be a Batman week for me, too. I still having fun with that rhythm game, maybe some Luigi's Mansion. And I'm trying to play a bit more on my Switch. I'm not finding anything that's like... For the last 6 months, I turned it on to do Ring Fit and maybe once in a while check out Animal Crossing. I'm trying to do more on it. It's just not a ton that I... Even like Hypnospace Outlaw, I was like, oh, cool, I'll buy that on Switch. And then it was like, it's on Game Pass. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to buy it at all. I'm going to get it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I still play Ring Fit. I'm like 2 or 3 times a week, though. I don't do it every day like I should, but I'm still trying to keep with it consistently. It's better than nothing.
It's still fun. No, yeah, absolutely. It's Ring Fit, it's still fun for me, but I also I feel like I need something else at this point.
I get that.
Like, I try to change up the variety. I change up what types of workouts I'm doing. There was one day this week, I just spent the whole time doing mini games instead of doing any of the actual adventure or the custom jogging stuff. I don't know. But I also keep running in place weird, so I keep tweaking my ankle. I need something. I don't know. Maybe I'll pull out that Wii Fit balance board.
Why?
Why not? Why not?
Probably because it requires batteries. Oh, we'll probably finish Halo 5 this week.
We better. I want to put it to bed so I can get deeper into these books. No, then we can play Halo Wars 2. If you like this episode, you can find it and all the other episodes on thefreecheese.com. You can follow The Free Cheese on Twitter at SomeFreeCheese. You can follow Matt at MattyIce131. Send us a letter, podcast at thefreecheese.com. We'll read anything you write. Are you buying a PS5 this year? Are you buying an Xbox Series X this year? What do you want on your Nintendo Switch? Which Sega ports are you hoping for? I'll answer any of it. Podcast at thefreecheese.com. That's it. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. Bye.